Let's talk about audio. Now, audio, as far as I'm concerned, is actually 60% of video. Now, that sounds like I'm really bad at maths, and I am, but what do I mean by that? What I mean is audio is super important. Now, you could have the most beautiful imagery in the world, and if the audio is rubbish, people are not going to watch it, they're not going to be engaged. You could have footage that is, kind of okay, but as long as the audio is okay, people can hear clearly what's going on, then people are going to be engaged. You're going to sort of hold your audience. You're going to have a lot better chance of holding your audience. So, how do you get good audio? The key to good audio, and the most important thing to remember with audio, is you want to get your microphone as close as possible to the source of your audio. That's rule number one. Get your microphone as close as you can to whatever it is you're recording. Now, the challenge is, obviously, with most of us where we're shooting, is the microphone is on our camera, and sometimes the camera is quite far away. So the reason why you want to get your microphone as close as possible is all along the distance between your microphone and the source of your audio, there is other sounds being picked up along the way. So if your microphone is 10 feet away from your audio source, well, that's 10 feet worth of other noise and audio that microphone could potentially pick up. For example, I'm talking to you now, and my microphone on the built-in camera is probably no more than about 4 or 5 feet away, but that would still actually give us a lot of room noise and a lot of echo, because in this room, for example, I've got the heating, I've got air conditioning, I've got lights which are making maybe a little bit of a buzz. So I've actually got what's called a lavalier mic on my shirt, and it's just right here. You hear that? So all I've done is I've just stuck that to the inside of my shirt, and that way the audio is being picked up really close to my mouth, and you hear pretty good audio. I'm now going to switch to the built-in microphone on the camera, and you can hear that this really doesn't sound very good. Now, there's also different kinds of microphones and different sorts of microphones that you use in different situations. The most common one that you may have seen floating around is what's called a shotgun mic. So this is what's called a shotgun mic, and this normally gets placed on your camera, and you plug it into the microphone jack on your camera, and it picks up audio a lot better than the microphone built in your camera. Like, probably rule number 2 after rule number 1 is never use the audio from the microphone on your camera. No matter how good the microphone is, it's rubbish. Take my word for it. So this is going to be a lot better. The reason why shotgun mics are good is, and the reason why they're called shotgun mics, is they sort of have a spread like a triangle, like a shotgun would fire outwards, but it's more refined than the microphone that's on your camera. So it's going to pick up sort of almost like a beam in front of your camera, like a beam in front of your camera, and it's going to pick up better audio. So that's a really good option if you don't have any other options. So definitely look at a shotgun mic. What's nice, this will sort of just latch into the lighter attachment, and if you've got a rig and sort of thing, you can sort of attach. So that's a good way to go. It's not the best way to go, though, if you're trying to pick up audio from someone speaking. The best way to pick up audio from someone that's speaking is to have what's called either a lavalier mic or a microphone on a boom pole. So a microphone on a boom pole, I'm sure you guys have seen it in the movies, where someone's holding this giant pole and there's a microphone on the end and they hold the microphone above the people. So this is a very basic boom pole setup. You've got your pole and you've got your blimp on the other end, and then you extend the pole even further. And then when you're capturing audio, you either hold this above your participants, or you can hold it underneath your participants. And holding it underneath is probably going to be a little bit easier. So I always recommend starting underneath if you can. Obviously, you want to keep it out of shot like that. And if you're holding it above, it needs to be out of shot, because very often you'll see it whoop, fall in the back. And that's, just basically how boom pole works. Now this thing up top here, on top of it, is called a blimp. You don't technically have to have the blimp. It's actually the microphone goes inside the blimp. And what the blimp is actually for is to get rid of wind noise. So if you are shooting outside with a shotgun mic, you definitely want to have a blimp or some sort of cover to prevent wind. In fact, if it gets even windier, you can get what's called a dead cat. Oh, hey, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
Good, self.
Just got delivered for Lee.
That's me! I get a toy, yay!
It's Sony too, so it must be exciting.
Actually, I know what that is, and it's for someone else.
Oh, there we go. Boring then.
Yeah.
Good on you, mate.
Awesome,
Thanks
thank you very much.
See ya.
See ya. Chris, that's your lens. So this thing on top is actually called a blimp, and you don't have to use a blimp. If you're shooting inside, just a standard microphone's going to be fine. You can actually see that the microphone is in there. This is a very expensive microphone holder if you are just using it to hold your microphone. But what this does do is it prevents wind noise, and that's really important if you're shooting outside. So if you're shooting, even if there's like the slightest bit of wind, your microphone could pick it up, and having a blimp definitely makes that a lot easier. If the wind is particularly strong, you can get what's called a dead cat and put that on your blimp, and that covers the wind noise even more, and might sort of also be a pet if you want one that's very low maintenance. The disadvantage of a boom pole is that obviously someone's got to be standing there and their arms are going to be tired, they're going to be following around. Also, your boom operator's got to be very aware of the camera and what the camera can see, because very often if they get tired or if they're not paying attention, that boom mic will start sort of coming into the shot, and suddenly you see the mic sort of showing up from above or below the camera. So that's some of the disadvantages of a boom pole. And for most of us, a boom operator isn't really practical, because most of us, I'd imagine, at least starting off, are one-man bands, and the productions that we're working on don't have the staff to have someone dedicated as a boom operator. Now, even if you're not going to get someone to hold it, you can get around that. So you can get stands where you can mount your boom pole, and if you're just doing a static interview, like someone sitting down and you want to put the microphone just above them, the key there is make sure the microphone's pointed directly at their mouth. So you either put the microphone just slightly above them or slightly below them, obviously out of shot, and have it pointed directly at their mouth, and you're going to get a pretty good sound quality from that. A little pro tip for you is, if you don't want to go the route of a boom pole, because the boom poles can be pretty pricey, and rightly so, because they do need to be very strong and rigid yet very light. So they're made out of carbon fiber or whatever it is that's expensive, but they are worth the money. If you don't want to go that route, and if you're not going to be moving around a lot, so most of the times we're using a shotgun mic with a boom pole is going to be static in an interview situation, save yourself some money and go to a music shop and buy a microphone stand. Because a boom pole setup, when I was looking at it, was something like $200-300, whereas I went to my local music store and bought a mic stand for $50. Now, of course, it's not nearly as nice and as firm and as solid as the boom pole setup, but it does the job in a pinch, so that's something you can look at. So if you're not going to do a shotgun or a boom pole, the next option is to use what's called a lavalier mic. And a lavalier mic is a microphone that you actually mount on a person. Normally they're quite small, like this, and you would, like most of them come with a little clip, so you can just clip that onto the person's shirt, and then you can hear them much better. The one thing about these, though, is that if you clip it on a shirt, you can see it. You can see this. You can hide the cord inside their shirt, but you're going to see a little bit sort of just kind of coming out. And for me, that kind of breaks the illusion of the film sort of thing. So I like to hide my lavalier mics, and how I hide them. So I use a brand called Rode. You don't have to use that, but they're a really nice Australian brand. And they make a really cool thing called the Invisilab, and it's a little bit of plastic that all of their lavalier mics can then clip into like that, and then you can just get a little bit of duct tape or a little bit of sticky, and you can stick those inside the shirt. For example, the lav mic that I'm wearing is actually attached to an Invisilab, and then it's just stuck onto my shirt like that and hidden inside my shirt. The sticky things that I use are these things called undercovers by Rycote, whatever. So it's like $15 for like 20 or 30 of them, so really handy. And also, if you don't have an Invisilab, these ones, you can get ones with these little sort of felt tips, so you put the microphone between that and the felt tip and kind of holds it in place. The one disadvantage, or one of the really big disadvantages of using a lav mic, is that if the person moves around a lot, you might get some rustling of the clothes on the mic, and that's obviously not good. So ideally, in a perfect situation, you'd have a shotgun mic or a boom mic above the person if they're just sitting down for an interview, and you'd have a lavalier mic on them as well. Now that might seem a little bit extreme, but take my word for it, audio is either impossible to fix or very expensive to fix. For example, if you've got a video and you've underexposed that shot, well, you could bump up the exposure, and yeah, you're going to get a little bit of noise, but you can sort of deal with that. If you've got audio and you've been tapping on the microphone, it's almost impossible to separate that tapping from the audio that that microphone is picking up. and then that audio is bloody useless to you. So you always want to have, if you can, at least 2 sources of good audio, because if you don't and the audio stuffs up, you pretty much can't fix it. Now, I've got this really cool and pretty expensive, even by my standards, plugin called Isotope. So Isotope is a company that makes these amazing plugins. The ones I use is RX6 Advanced, and they can do things like remove room echo. In this number 6 version, they've actually brought in a thing, I haven't tried it yet, where it will remove the rustle from a lav mic, which is pretty cool. So if you do want to remove audio, you can fix it, but to give you an idea, RX Advanced is $1,200 or $1,300 US, and it works most of the time, but not even that can't fix everything. So I could not be more clear about this, is that you want to get good audio on the day, because to fix it later, really, really hard. There's different versions of lav mics you can look at. This is probably a good cheap one to start out with. So this is called the SmartLav Plus, and it's by a company called Rode. This is the cheapest one that they make. What's really cool about this is this will plug directly into a smartphone. So probably what I've done actually is get a couple of cheap iPod Touches, because nowadays they're really cheap. So you can plug that into an iPod Touch, put it in the person's back pocket, put it on them, record it. Now, when you're recording audio separately, it's very important to have a loud noise at the beginning of your video so that you can sync the audio and the video later. And that's why you have one of these jobbies. So that when you're looking at the movies and they do that fancy blah, 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 mark, it's so that they can mark that, that noise on your video track is going to be this giant spike in the waveform. And I'll show you an image of that while I'm talking. And so it's easy to just take the videos and line up that giant spike. Now, if you don't want to be fancy and have one of these, you could just stand in front of all the cameras and just clap. Another good reason why you clap and why you make sure that you have all the cameras pointing at you is, worst comes to worst, if the audio, let's say, breaks out on my second camera, if I clap, as I visually see my hands come together, I can use the visuals of that to match up those in Premiere or Final Cut or whatever video editing application you're using. So that's the little cheap lav microphone. One of the next steps up is to go with a wireless setup. So this is the wireless setup that I use. It's called the Rode Link Filmmaker or something like that. And so this gets plugged into your camera, and there's a little audio thing. And then this sits, I've got one of these sitting in my pocket, plugged into the lav that I'm using at the moment. And what's really nice is that it's wireless, so you don't have to worry about long cables and things like that. Obviously, this all involves cost. And even when I was starting out, I didn't get the wireless setup. I got the little one that plugged into a smartphone or an iPod Touch. Now, little pro tip as to why I plug it into an iPod Touch these days as opposed to just putting it on my iPhone is, if you're running the app that records off of that and your phone rings while you're videoing, it's going to stop recording. So the first time I used that, I was doing an interview with a couple of teachers at a school, and everything was awesome, and we filmed it, and I got back home and I started looking at the footage, and my audio kind of cut out. It was like a 20-minute interview, and my audio cut out 10 minutes into the interview, and I couldn't work out why, and I saw I had a missed call. So obviously when the phone rang, the phone stopped recording. So if you are going to use that on a smartphone, put your smartphone into airplane mode so you don't get a call during the recording, or just get an iPod Touch, and they're relatively cheap and you can do that. The other alternative, just getting a really long cable. I also did that when I was first starting out, but you've got to tape that down for safety and all that kind of jazz. So if you can avoid long cables, that's a pain in the tush. Really, the wireless setup, once you've got the budget for it, is definitely the way to go. And you can, obviously, the more walls you put in front, that's going to lower the signal strength. But if you're like on a football field or something like that, you could probably walk, I don't know, like 100 yards, 80 meters, something like that, and it's still keeping the signal. So it's really, really good way to go. The other thing with audio to look at is whether to plug your microphone directly into your camera or to get a dedicated audio recorder. Now, again, if you can afford a dedicated audio recorder, I highly recommend it. The reason for that is the preamps that are built into most DSLRs are okay at best, but they're not going to give you the best sound capture that you can get, and audio recorders are specifically designed for these purposes and can do a much better job. Now there's lots of brands out there, I'm not going to recommend anyone in particular, but I've used the Tascams and the Zoom ones, and those are two really good brands, pretty easy to get your head around. So have a look at those, have a look at some other ones. You can find, just like the Zoom H1, I think it's about $80, and they go all the way up to, $500 depending on how much whiz bang you want from them. So that's something to look at. Having said that, if you don't want to go the route of an external recorder and you want to plug directly into your camera, that's fine too. Again, for the level of, if you're doing stuff for feature films, absolutely you're going to, want to do it properly. But for most videos online and things like that, as long as you've got a good microphone close to your person, even if you're going straight to the camera, it's really not going to be the end of it. It's still going to find, trust me, unless your brother-in-law is an audio engineer like mine is, no one's going to point out to you that your audio might sound a little bit tinny. Thanks, Anthony, really appreciate that. Another thing to look at with audio is that when you're actually recording the audio, you definitely want to get a good set of headphones and have them plugged into your camera if your camera has a headphone jack, and listen to the audio while you're recording. Now this is really important because most cameras that record audio will have audio meters, so you can see the levels and how high they're going. Don't trust the meters, okay? Never trust the meters, always actually listen, because meters will show you, yes, your audio is too loud or too soft, but your meters aren't going to tell you that the microphones are picking up the little bird chirping in the trees, or when a car drives past, or the airplane going overhead. And it's really important to monitor your audio, because as I've said numerous times already, to fix audio is either impossible or ridiculously expensive. I just want to show you another thing for hiding microphones. And so instead of using something like the Invisilav that I got for my little Rode microphones, if you don't have the Rode microphones, you can use the Ricoh things that I talked about, but I want to show you an El Cheapo way to hide a microphone that you may not have thought of. So here's some duct tape, and I'm just going to rip that little stick of duct tape off, and then I'm going to fold it into a little triangle, and then fold that little triangle onto itself again, and onto itself again. So now I've got a little triangle of duct tape that's sticky on both sides, and I'm just going to stick that to my face while I talk to you and make another one. And we're going to go ahead and make another one of those. So again, you just fold to a little triangle, ignore the one on my face, stop laughing at me, and you make another little triangle. Now I've got two little triangles, and now what you can do is put one on either side of your microphone, and then you've got a little bit of give in there, and you can hide that under a tie or under a collar or under a shirt. Another thing that you want to do when you're placing the microphone onto a person is give yourself a little loop, like that, and then duct tape underneath and above, and that will prevent, if someone's pulling on it, it won't get pulled right away. It'll give you a bit of give. So that's a couple of little tips for microphone placement when using lav mics on people. Now here's a couple of clips that I've prepared for you to give you an idea of all the different sort of sound levels and sound qualities you're going to get from different sorts of microphones in different sorts of environments. Hi, I'm Lee Herbet from CapturingPassion.com, and you're not, which is probably just as well, because if we were all Lee Herbet, where would we park? This is a quick video to show you the difference in sound levels you'll get from various microphones depending on what distance they are and what they're plugged into. So I've got some microphones plugged into my camera, I've got some plugged into my Zoom H6 and some plugged into my iPhone. And in terms of ambient noise, what we've got is a little bit of sound coming from the heat coming through the ducts in the ceiling. We've got my Synologies over here on my right whirring away. We might get some noise if a car drives past outside. So I'm going to say the same phrase over and over for the different microphones, and you can hear what it sounds like. So to begin with, we've got my built-in mic on my Sony A7S, which is probably about, I don't know, 5 or 7 feet away from me. I like big butts and I cannot lie. Then we've got a Rode video mic attached to my Panasonic GH4, which is also about 5 or 6 feet away from me. I like big butts and I cannot lie. Then we've got my Rode NTG2 just above my head here. I like big butts and I cannot lie. Then we've got a Rode Video Mic Pro sitting on my desk, but this one's only about 3 feet away from my mouth. I like big butts and I cannot lie. Then we have a Rode SmartLav Plus, which is plugged into my iPhone over here on my desk. I like big butts and I cannot lie. And finally, we've got the Rode Lav on my chest over here as well, and that's going through my Rode Link wireless system. I like big butts and I cannot lie. So hopefully that gives you an idea of how that all sounds and shows you that when you want to capture sound without getting a lot of ambient noise, you want to put your microphone as close as possible to your sound source. I'm Lee Herbet from CapturingPassion.com. Catch you next time. Hi, I'm Lee Herbet from CapturingPassion.com, and you're not. Quite frankly, I don't know why you'd want to be. I have issues. So this video is to demonstrate the different sound levels you're going to get from various different microphones at different distances from your sound source. Again, the sound source being me. We're in an outdoor environment here, so there's different things to deal with than in an indoor environment. We don't have as much echo because there's no walls for the sound to bounce off of, but we've got birds chirping and nature and all sorts of things flying around making sound. So let's look at the setup and what it's going to sound like. We've got 2 cameras with microphones about 5 or 6 feet away, and then the rest of these are closer to me. So first of all, we've got just the built-in microphone on my Sony A7S. If you're lost, you can look and you will find me time after time. Then we've got a first generation Rode Video Mic Pro on my Panasonic GH4, again about 5 or 6 feet away. If you're lost, you can look and you will find me time after time. Then we have a whole bunch of mics plugged into my Zoom H6 here on the table. First of all, we've got the Video Mic Pro about 3 feet away from me. If you're lost, you can look and you will find me time after time. Then we have the Rode NTG2 just above my head here. If you're lost, you can look and you will find me time after time. We have the Rode SmartLav Plus connected to my chest here, going into my iPod Touch. If you're lost, you can look and you will find me time after time. And finally, we have the Rode Lav plugged into my Rode Link wireless system going into my Zoom H6. If you're lost, you can look and you will find me time after time. And that's all the different microphones at various different distances. I hope that was helpful. I hope that sort of helped you get across what it's doing. I'm Lee Herbet from CapturingPassion.com. We'll catch you next time. So something we haven't spoken about yet is music, and music is also very important in your movies, because if you think about it, I like to say that, you know, the audio, the recording, that's getting the message across, but the music is going to create the emotion of your video. Now you can use color, you can use lighting to create emotion, but music is a very easy way to create an emotion. Where imagine Jaws without the Jaws music, or imagine E.T. without the E.T. music. These create emotions. So how do you get this music is probably the first thing you're thinking. Well, you can't just go to your iTunes library and pick a song that you really like and use that in a commercial job. That's stealing, and you have to get the license for that music. What you can do, because getting, you know, Michael Jackson songs is going to cost you a fair bit of money, is you can go to various different websites where composers create music specifically for video. So it's copyright-free music that you can purchase. Normally they're about anywhere from $20 to a couple $100 for the song or the music, depending on what song and music and the quality, all that kind of jazz. A few of the ones that I use Soundstripe, I use Artlist.io, I use Cinephonics. Premium Beat and Music Bed are a couple that I've used a little bit in the past. They're more of the premium level sort of stuff, so they're quite pricey. Like, I mean, Music Bed will cost you like $100, $200 per song, but they are really, really good music. So those are some of the places you can look at to get copyright-free music to use in your projects. And I think that pretty much covers everything that we need to cover with audio.